Let's go to Baltimore now in the United States, where President Barack Obama is giving a speech at a mosque, and it's his first visit to a mosque during his presidency. Let's listen in.
We're asking, are we going to be forced out of the country? Or are we going to be rounded up? Why do people treat us like that? Conversations that you shouldn't have to have with children. Not in this country. Not at this moment. And that's an anxiety echoed in letters I get from Muslim Americans around the country. I've had people write to me and say, I feel like I'm a second-class citizen. I've had mothers write and say, my heart cries every night thinking about how our daughter might be treated at school. A girl from Ohio, 13 years old, told me, I'm scared. A girl from Texas signed her letter, a confused 14-year-old trying to find her place in the world. These are children just like mine. And the notion that they would be filled with doubt and questioning their place in this great country of ours, at a time when they've got enough to worry about, it's hard being a teenager already. That's not who we are. We're one American family, and when any part of our family starts to feel separate or second class or targeted, it tears at the very fabric of our nation. It's a challenge to our values, and that means we have much work to do. We've got to tackle this head on. We have to be honest and clear about it, and we have to speak out. This is a moment when, as Americans, we have to truly listen to each other and learn from each other. And I believe it has to begin with a common understanding of some basic facts. And you know, I express these facts, although they'd be obvious to many of the people in this place, because unfortunately it's not facts that are communicated on a regular basis through our media. So let's start with this fact. For more than 1,000 years, people have been drawn to Islam's message of peace. And the very word itself, Islam, comes from salam, peace. The standard greeting is, Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you. And like so many faiths, Islam is rooted in a commitment to compassion and mercy and justice and charity. Whoever wants to enter paradise, the Prophet Muhammad taught, let him treat people the way he would love to be treated. And for Christians like myself, I'm assuming that sounds familiar. The world's 1.6 billion Muslims are as diverse as humanity itself. They are Arabs and Africans. They're from Latin America to Southeast Asia, Brazilians, Nigerians, Bangladeshis, Indonesians. They are white and brown and black. There's a large African American Muslim community. That diversity is represented here today. A 14-year-old boy in Texas who's Muslim spoke for many when he wrote to me and said, we just want to live in peace. So here's another fact. Islam has always been part of America. Starting in colonial times, many of the slaves brought here from Africa were Muslim. And even in their bondage, some kept their faith alive. A few even won their freedom and became known to many Americans. And when enshrining the freedom of religion in our Constitution and our Bill of Rights, our founders meant what they said when they said it applied to all religions. You know, back then, Muslims were often called Mohammedans. And Thomas Jefferson explained that the Virginia statute for religious freedom he wrote was designed to protect all faiths. And I'm quoting Thomas Jefferson now, the Jew and the Gentile, the Christian and the Mohammedan. Jefferson and John Adams had their own copies of the Quran. Benjamin Franklin wrote that even if the Mufti of Constantinople were to send a missionary to preach to us, he would find a pulpit at his service. So this is not a new thing. Generations of Muslim Americans helped to build our nation. They were part of the flow of immigrants who became farmers and merchants. They built America's first mosque, surprisingly enough, in North Dakota. America's oldest surviving mosque is in Iowa. The first Islamic center in New York City was built in the 1890s. Muslim Americans worked on Henry Ford's assembly line, cranking out cars. A Muslim American designed the skyscrapers of Chicago. In 1957, when dedicating the Islamic Center in Washington, D.C., President Eisenhower said, "I should like to assure you, my Islamic friends, that under the American Constitution and in American hearts, this place of worship is just as welcome as any other religion." And perhaps the most pertinent fact, Muslim Americans enrich our lives today in every way. They're our neighbors, the teachers who inspire our children, the doctors who trust us with our health, future doctors like Saba. They're scientists who win Nobel Prizes, young entrepreneurs who are creating new technologies that we use all the time. They're the sports heroes we cheer for, like Muhammad Ali and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Hakeem Olajuwon. And by the way, when Team USA marches into the next Olympics, one of the Americans waving the red, white, and blue will be a fencing champion wearing her hijab. Ibtihad Muhammad, who is here today. Stand up. Come on, let me...
Well, we've been listening to President Barack Obama giving a speech at a mosque in Maryland. Let's cross to Tatiana Anderson, who's been listening in for us in Washington, D.C. So, Tatiana, Obama's been listing some of the achievements and the place of Muslims within American society, and it goes way back to slavery.
Absolutely right. As a matter of fact, he's still speaking now, and he just said that, Islam and Muslims have been part of this country since the very beginning. He made the point to say that some slaves who were brought over to this country brought with them their Islamic religion, and they worked very hard to maintain that. He also cited the fact that the oldest surviving mosque here in the United States is in, of all places, but Iowa. So this speech really an effort to reach out to people who, one, don't know what the faith is all about, and two, to let people know who are American Muslims that he understands. These remarks that President Obama, is in the process of giving right now are expected to echo talking points that he delivered earlier this week at the Israeli embassy, where he warned of growing concerns over anti-Semitism. And in this particular speech, he is addressing these issues, but from the point of the anti-Muslim rhetoric that's been happening here in the United States. He started his speech really by explaining what Islam and what a mosque is. For somebody who doesn't know, he says that it's not only a place of worship, but it's where community members can go to get services. At this particular mosque where he is, there's a health clinic that's open to all people, regardless of their faith. There's a school, there's a gym. It's a place where people can meet candidates during the election cycle. And he said that essentially it's just like a church or a synagogue. You may recall that the previous president, George W. Bush, visited a mosque here in the United States immediately following those 9/11 terror attacks. But in his almost 2 terms as president, President Obama has not visited a mosque here in the United States. So this trip is likely his effort to make up for that and really let people know that this is something that he's thinking of, especially in the light of the anti-Islamic sentiment and fervor that's been happening here. Just earlier this week, Pew Research released a poll that said at least half of Americans believe that some American Muslims are in fact anti-American. And of course, you'll probably recall that Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump issued an edict that no Muslims should be allowed here in the United States in the wake of that deadly Paris attack.
Tatiana?
So, Molly, a lot going on here.
Tatiana from Washington, thank you so much.